Hello, and welcome to Replay Value. If you're a fan of Haikyuu, Naruto, Tokyo Ghoul, or any number of other popular anime series, and especially if you're a fan of Pokemon, there's a decent chance that you saw those characters mashed up in an ending that looks and sounds a little bit like this. If the title of this video wasn't clear, the homage is to Kekkai Sensen, or Blockade Battlefront, specifically the ED from the first season called Sugar Song and Bitter Step. And I wouldn't be surprised if you knew it from elsewhere. I see it get mentioned a lot when the conversation of best EDs come around. And if it hasn't been, I usually do so since Sugar Song and Bitter Step falls squarely in my top 5. Another one of which I've already covered on this channel, and I'm slowly making my way through that list. Kekkai Sensen also happens to be one of my favorite shows and one of the few that I recommend to people regardless of their genre preferences or familiarity with anime as a medium. So I get really excited when people tell me that they've seen the ED and are familiar with the show, or that they've already seen the show because the ED inspired them to give it a shot. But interestingly, the mass appeal of the ED comes with being removed from the show itself to some degree. So I want to recontextualize Sugar Song and Bitter Step in Kekkai Sensen, to piece together some of the great thematic resonance that's tucked away in its structure, and the foreshadowing and symbolism hiding in its beautifully composed visuals. But before we do that, I really cannot stress enough how much I recommend this show, and doubly how much I don't want to spoil this experience for you if you haven't seen the entirety of at least the first season. But if you don't mind spoilers, or if you've already seen the show, let's jump right in. My favorite part of the ED, apart from the song, is that on a structural level, the ED plays with a metafictional conceit, specifically how it predominantly occurs on a stage. Kekkai Sensen engages with the role of the observer pretty consistently. Leonardo Watch, our main character, fulfills that role after all. From originally being introduced playing around with his camera, to the words of the being that gave him the all-seeing eyes of God. Which of you shall be the witness? Those all-seeing eyes act as a conduit to higher beings, allowing them to observe major events from the perspective of the holder and recording these events. The really interesting thing about this is that you and I are those higher beings. Maybe not literally within the universe of Kekkai Sensen, but we are able to witness the events of the show from predominantly Leo's perspective, and certainly without him there would be no show. Regardless of the threats made on Helsalim's lot, those gods will be unaffected in the same way that the Great Collapse has no impact on our day-to-day lives. The all-seeing eyes of God allow for this unification of our reality and Kekkai's reality to form this pseudo-meta universal viewer. And so for the ED to take place on a stage has the show leaning heavily into this metafictional aspect, which is borne out by the dancing and goofing around, not only of our heroes, but also our antagonists. We see these little snapshots of the characters' interactions, but just like an impartial observer, the lights and camera don't make any value judgments about good or evil, they simply show what's there to see. There's no sense of the fate of the city or the world being in the balance here. It wouldn't affect our reality if they were. So instead, the element that we do invest in emotionally, the characters, are on full display. And in that way, Sugar Song and Bitter Step is almost the perfect embodiment of characters in fiction. When all the world's a stage, all the men and women are merely players. You could swap the physical characters out, as this shot does, and still be able to perform the story as long as the roles still are performed. Of course, you don't have to know about Kekkai's interest in observers or in my posited viewer unification theory to understand the metafictional element of Sugar Song and Bitter Step. But to me, those things make this ED even more fantastic. A reminder of how Kekkai Sensen engages with this concept of observation that is fundamental to the show's DNA as much as the music and color are. So let's talk about my other favorite element of the ED, color. The primary colors of the ED are white, black, and red. The first two making sense because of the characters who are nicknamed the same, and red being the color of blood, which might be a little bit important to the show. There's the red curtain, and all of the characters are wearing white and black outfits. It's all there, but these colors are also shown with the roses that appear throughout the ED. Oh yeah, we're talking about flowers again. The first flowers we see are when red flower petals appear on Michela's wheelchair. Usually red flowers mean romantic love, like roses, which would seem to be what these are on first glance. But in more sober settings like this one, they usually convey sacrifice and regret, because of red's association with the heart and the spilling of blood. This more sacrificial element becomes immediately apparent if we jump forward a bit to the shots of Leo crying after Michelle gave up her vision, leaving her blind. The only thing moving in this shot is red petals falling in the background, the same as the transition to get us into this sequence. This moment is what allows the series to happen, what allows us to watch Kekkai Sensen from that earlier unification theory I dropped earlier. But it's a tragic moment for Leo, one that he spends the entire first season trying out how to best write a letter to his sister, to explain the depth of his regret and sorrow over this moment, while explaining the things he's been able to see and do because of it. The red petals falling despite it being a still image adds to this disconnect that makes the viewers seem above the reality of the work, or viewing a metatextual element. It also ties into the title of the song, specifically that duality of emotions, sweetness and bitterness. The next shot of White's foot heading towards the white rose and then dragging it, revealing blood, is my personal favorite in the ED. White roses tend to mean undying love, literally a love stronger than death, which ties into White's character of being the force field holding together the city's barrier through the love of her parents. Blood in Kekkai Sensen is synonymous with power and life force, so her squishing and dragging the blood out of the white rose, which is basically her own representation, is foreshadowing for her lovingly sacrificing her remaining life to save her brother, Leo, and the city. White and Michelle are mirror images between these two shots as well, placing those two as a comparison point, which in turn foreshadows White's future sacrifice. The sequence is also beautifully composed and animated, and that contrast between the white and red leaves a lasting impression throughout the ED. That shot is followed by Black, aka William, and the King of Despair, aka Blue, surrounded by blue and black flower petals. These colors contrast with the white and red from earlier, matching their names and outfits throughout the series. Both are holding white roses, Black holding a dozen and Blue holding the single one. Both of them are beholden to White. This shot where we cycle between the Great Collapse and an ordinary day of them holding her show this, though the reasons why they need her to be complete in the case of Black and to complete their plan in the case of Blue are entirely different. The final two shots featuring flowers also deserve mention, the latter being this shot of Fempt and Aligera, laughing with forks to eat red roses, which speaks to their absurdist desires, to overthrow the natural order and the lunacy that they circulate to each other. The first shot in this final sequence is the fist holding on to the bleeding white rose, which is indicative of Leo and White's victory at the end of the first season. A victory that is achieved through sacrifice, represented by the literal spilling of blood here, as performed by White, if she is indeed the holder of the white rose. But the red petals also speak to Michelle's sacrifice early in the story, which brought us to this point. Leo only triumphs at the end because of both of their sacrifices, in which case Leo would be the one with the raised fist. I would put my money on the former, but both have sound rationale. Of course, this ED is also fantastic for all of the small character moments. From Chain and Zap dancing and fighting, hell, Zap even goes for a kick to the face here, to Fempt and Aligera playing the tambourine and triangle somberly. And anytime the Tortoise Knight appears, I get a goofy smile on my face. All in all, Sugar Song and Bitter Step is a beautiful song that appropriately hits the emotional notes in its title and has visuals to match those feelings. It's an amazing ED beyond those surface elements that make it so popular. It's also a great snapshot into what makes Kekkai Sensen such a spectacular show. Hope you enjoyed. Leave a like and comment with your thoughts, subscribe for more videos, and follow me on Twitter for my live analyses and future projects. Link in the description. We'll be back real soon with another video, but until then, thanks for watching.